Something that happens as I'm discovering these channels for the first time, Dr. Terabin, Jake Doolittle, Girl Defined, Paul and Morgan, is that I end up looking at slightly older videos because I need a better idea of who they are. The first Paul and Morgan video I watched was a pickleball one that had been uploaded days prior. I didn't understand who any of these people were. I went back and I watched them meet. I watched them give me an idea of who they were. And I did the same thing with Girl Defined. Now, Girl Defined, 3 days ago, uploaded a video called Should Christian Girls Send Nude Photos? And because this was 3 days ago, I do expect it to be a little bit more tame than their older videos. But I don't know. What if they double down? What if they just go, you're not a real Christian girl if you've ever been naked? If Jesus has seen you naked, you're a whatever they want to say, right? I remember their names now. It's Bethany and Kristen. I don't know that I'm 100% sure I know which is which. I think Kristen is in blue. I'm like your high school teacher was like, I'll get your names after a few weeks. I thought it was stupid then, but now I just don't remember names real good.
What's up, y'all? It's Bethany and Kristen, and we're going to be talking about should Christian girls send nude photos? And your initial reaction might be like, oh my goodness, why is she talking about this? Like, does she know my phone history? And your reaction might be like, oh my goodness, I would never do that. Like, why would I? We're gonna have a whole host of reactions to this question. But I would say in today's modern dating world, including in the Christian dating world, that sending nude photos, even just like viewing, it's become very normal and casual and honestly
and encouraged
and kind of like, this is healthy for you. And I would say there are a lot of Christian girls who are dating who kind of think like, I have to do some of these things in order to get a guy. And if I am not kind of like given these little nuggets, like, I'm not going to get a guy. Like, do you know the dating pool? Do you know what guys expect? Like, okay, like, especially if I'm telling him, like, I'm not going to have sex with you. Like, okay, I've got to send some nudes. Like, I've got to kind of keep him on the line. And so we just kind of want to talk about that and maybe give you a perspective that we believe is biblical and actually for your best and for like the best chance of a thriving relationship.
I forgot how many syllables Bethany could pack into a paragraph. The thing about me is that I'm old and they happen to be older than me, so I'm a little weary about what either of us know about dating. I'm a little scared of them going, because you're not going to have sex with them because you're a good Christian woman, you do have to send nudes, but I think they're going to do the exact opposite. It feels like they're going to say something like, yes, it's normal, but you shouldn't feel pressured to do so, which I think is probably the right approach. I think there's lines like anything else, lines that I didn't follow. I think teenagers should probably just not at all. Did I when I was a teenager? Yes. Did I receive them when I was a teenager? Yes. So it is a little bit hypocritical, but I was a kid and I didn't understand. Now that I'm older, I'm like, all right, maybe let's not do that as children. Now that I am the age that I am, as an adult, if you want to send people nudes, send people nudes. What do I care? But you should do it because it's something that you want to do. You shouldn't do it because you feel pressured to do so. If someone is begging you for nudes and you want to say no, that is probably not someone you want to be with.
So I was really surprised about the statistic. Maybe you will be. I don't know. But something I found online said that 40% of teen girls were engaging in sending explicit messages or receiving explicit messages. 40%. Does that surprise you or no?
Not
in this
really.
Day and age? Yeah. It doesn't seem that surprising. Obviously, this was a general pool. I don't know, Christians or not. But sadly, like you said, it has become the norm. And in fact,
I'm curious to see where the split is between like sending and receiving, because I feel like I know a lot of people, women specifically, who get sent pictures without any sort of consent. And I wonder if that's included in this.
An article, few different articles on Cosmo, which is not a source you want to go to for any relationship advice.
They say that a lot and they use Cosmo a lot. In the few videos of Girl Defined that I've watched, they've quoted Cosmo multiple times now. And each time she's like, you don't want to go to Cosmo, but I'm using it as my source.
Marriage advice,
my gosh, right?
Any sort of advice whatsoever, please run away from Cosmo. Not good stuff. And here's an example of why. These were some of their articles in promoting sexting to single women, specifically in dating relationships. Here's one title: Why Sexting is Good for You. So in dating, really promoting like why it's going to embellish your relationship and why it's good for you. Another article was titled Scientists: Sexting is Totally Normal. So now we're bringing in the scientists.
So dumb.
What are the scientists bringing to the table to say that this is
Cannot roll my eyes
totally
bigger.
normal? Okay, normal maybe like because a lot of people are doing it, but is normal always good and healthy? Like, come on, scientists. And then another one that they had was an article titled A Safer Way to Sext. And here they were giving lots of tips. I kind of like skimmed through it. Just like, okay, make sure that blah, 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 your phone, keep it protected and that other people can't. You want to send it privately and just keep in mind someone could find it on someone else's phone. Like, oh my goodness.
I think I'm going to end up repeating a little of what I just said. At some point, you have to just understand that adults are going to do whatever they want. And your job as someone who wants to be some sort of guiding figure is to make sure that they do it safely. I don't think it's hard to imagine why people say things like sexting would make your relationship better. Do you know how many people, men specifically, also I'm sick, I don't know if you can hear that, I've been out for the last like 2 days. Do you know how many people specifically are really bad at the things that they say they're going to do? How many times have we seen a post where someone's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do all that to you, and then they get there and they're too shy? It's just practice and it's just role play, and if you want to do that with your partner, that's dope. There's nothing wrong with it. And if you want to say this about teenagers, then yeah, absolutely, maybe don't do it. But I'm going to assume Cosmo is not giving out sex advice to teenagers. And so if you're two adults in a relationship and you want to sext, or you want to send pictures, or you want to practice flirting in that way, that's fine. Otherwise, you get people who are repressed and unable to ask for the things that they want, or unable to initiate, and you'd rather be boring in private than judged in public, I guess is what this is getting at. Oh no, I would never sext. Instead, I'm going to make an entire video about how it's impossible to look at someone in the eyes while you're orgasming. That you have to close your eyes and imagine something else 90% of the time in order to finish with your partner. You're not helping yourself.
So we know the advice out there in culture is that this is normal, this is healthy, this is something everyone engages in. If you want to keep the spice in your dating relationship or keep the guy, these are some great tips on how to do that.
Oh, I missed that. I completely missed that. These poor women, and I mean that because they're so afraid of losing any man around them. Like, I agree, like this is not something you should do if you feel desperate to keep a man around you. If you feel this urge of like, oh, I need to do this, otherwise the man that I met when I was 17 and he was 25 who told me, you know, like you would make a really good wife, and now I'm about to be 18 and he told me he's gonna propose publicly on the day that I turn 18, I need to do this so that he doesn't leave me. Maybe don't do that. Like, yeah, no, I get it. There shouldn't be a desperation in your relationship. There shouldn't be a I need to do this to keep someone around. That is an entirely different conversation than this is fun for either of you. I would hesitate to do anything out of desperation unless you are someone who's done nothing and like, you know, your partner's about to leave you and she's been asking for flowers for 4 years and you're like, best I can do is lottery ticket.
But right now, right off the bat, we will just say, throw it out. Yeah. It's garbage. It is not good for you.
Yeah. And if you are running in a circle or you
It really sucks to have to approach relationships in the way that they do, because to them, it's like, again, it's a sort of desperation to say, oh no, I have to be perfect so that a man loves me and that a man stays. How do you explain it to people whose entire life they've been told, you will one day grow up to be a wife? And so you have to be somebody worth being around for men who do not naturally want to be around you. How do you explain to them that they can be themselves and will attract a good man? Yeah, I didn't expect to feel bad for them during this video, but I do. I think the way that I speak and the way that I think would be entirely different if I was so scared of the people around me leaving me. It's an entirely different act to go to the grocery store, see flowers, get flowers for your partner, than it is to think, oh, my partner's going to leave me. What can I do? Oh, I know, I'll get them flowers.
you are around guys where you feel like you have to do these things in order to get a boyfriend, in order to get guys to be interested in you, you are in the wrong group. I promise you that I know single guys. I promise. I know single guys who are godly who would not want that. Like, they desire to honor God with their life and they desire to honor and respect the woman that they're dating. And that would be like a red flag to them if you were trying to send that. So
I feel like the religious Christian men are usually the ones who like want this and are very repressed about it. And so they tell you that they don't want it, but then you get into the relationship and they pressure you into it. Like, I feel like every time this happens on Twitter, you click on their profile and it goes, Christian, 3 times divorced, father of 4, no, I don't want to pay child support. And then there's like a Bible scripture in there.
I just want to encourage you, like, if you are in that kind of group where it's normalized, where super explicit sexual content is normalized, where, you know, stuff like is even normalized, like, run away, like, find a better church, to find a different community. Like, even if you have to like kind of be on your own for a minute as you search out more godly, solid, like biblically rooted friends, like, they are out there.
These are people who use the name of Jesus in vain. And I'm not religious anymore. I'm not going to get into that side of the conversation. But the people that Jesus was around are the people that these people would judge and they just want to feel so much better than them. There's a difference in normalizing something, and I don't want to say celebrating it because that's the wrong word, but I think that's kind of the idea. There's a difference in being like, yeah, normalish, not a big deal, and let's talk about all day. Yo, did you see this video I watched? Like, I'm surrounded by people who don't care. If any of my friends started an OF, I'd be like, dope, that's cool, dude. But none of us are like sitting around in a circle, all one hand over, with one person feeling left out because he's left-handed. So he's like, sorry, this is going to feel weird. Like, that's just weird. These people never talk about things like they're on a spectrum. It's either a yes or no. Like, either you are this holy, God-fearing, Jesus statue licking person, or you're going to hell. 100%. Or you've thought about hell.
I know sometimes it can seem like this is just what everyone's doing, but it's not. There was when I was single, we've shared about this in previous episodes, but like both of us saved our first kiss for marriage with our husbands. Both of us saved sex for marriage with our husbands. And
Sex, I understand. That's the thing. That's what you want. That's what you want. Kissing is wild. Listen, I'm not here. I am kind of here to judge them. If you want to save your first kiss for marriage, that has nothing to do with me. Congratulations.
remember like saving my first kiss for marriage was just a commitment I had made. And I still look back on it and like, that's a commitment I made. And I'm glad I made that commitment. And guess what? I got married, you know? But I remember there was a guy who asked me out, and I remember I was at church and he was the single guy.
My comments have told me, and I have not reached this side of girl defined yet, but my comments have told me that she was very, very desperate to get married. So the line there is, set your boundaries, but not to the point of desperation.
But I remember there was a guy who asked me out, and I remember I was at church and he was the single guy. He asked me out. This was like, honestly, not that long before Dave asked me out. And I told him, I was like, you know, I am kind of like extreme. I know you already know that. Like, I'm kind of conservative and I'm not kissing till I'm getting married. So if that's a problem with you, just like, don't even waste your time with me. And he was like, oh, I actually respect that, you know? And he was like, I think that's actually kind of cool. And he was super respectful. We went on a date. It didn't work out. He's happily married with kids. I'm happily married with kids. But I'm just telling you, like, there are guys that respect your boundaries. There are guys that respect God's design for saving sex for marriage. There are men out there that desire to honor you and respect you and to want to like honor the body that God's given you, honor the place, the sacred place of marriage for the nudity and for the sex and for all of that. And so just know, like, it's possible to have boundaries. It's possible to have standards and still get married. So don't be discouraged. Like, if I'm not sending the news, I'm never going to get married. Like, well, good, because you don't want to marry the guys that wants the nudes. I know, you know, living testimonies. That is possible.
Oh, dude, look, there's a lot going on there. You ever open like a can of Spam and it's just like so tightly packed in there? That's kind of how I feel when Bethany talks. It's not rare that you're going to find people, and in this situation, specifically men, who are going to tell you they respect your boundaries. And I'm not going to tell you they're not going to, but I'm going to tell you that in a normal conversation with everyday people, when you tell them your boundaries, they're going to go, oh, cool. Yeah, I respect that. Whatever it is, whatever it is, whatever it is. Like, you're not talking to a bunch of 16-year-old boys. You're talking to adults within your own church setting. Like, it's not surprising if they tell you they're going to respect your boundaries. And they're not so rare that you should just jump at the first person who says they're going to. You're okay. Whatever you want to do with your own body, you're good. As long as you're an adult, you're fine. Do you want to send someone nudes? Do it with their permission. I feel like I skipped over that part. I'm assuming you're in a relationship for this. If you're single and you want to send someone nudes, maybe ask them first. I know that this isn't like a point, but it would be easier to listen to them talk if they admitted that the things that they said, the boundaries that they made up, were their own. Instead, they always qualify it with in the eye of God or God's design. Like, for example, they'll say waiting for sex until marriage, like God's design. And they talk about it kind of with the idea that the woman's body is going to be sacred, but the man's body, we don't talk about it. Whatever has been done with it, whatever has been done to it, whatever they've done, don't talk about it. The woman has to be a virgin. The man has to just not send nudes. He can receive them. God said it's okay.
Okay, so is it a big deal to God? That can be something that like, okay, well, you're just conservative. That's just your opinion. Like, well, what does God actually think about this? Well, he doesn't specifically talk about texting nude photos because obviously phones didn't exist back then. But we see very clear, which I appreciate how scripture can be so direct and so clear about things because it offers us a clear path forward. Like, this is God's good for you. And 1 Thessalonians 4:3-5 is very...
Watch them pull out a Bible verse. It's like, thou shalt not paint nude drawings of thyself and send it out.
For this is the will of God. Okay, we always want to know, what's the will of God?
Yeah.
What does he want from me? What does he desire from me? For this is the will of God. What is it? For your sanctification, okay, for growing you, changing you to be more like Christ, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor, not in the passion of the lust like the Gentiles who do not know God. A beautiful, straightforward, this is the will of God.
I'm explaining this to the wrong people because you already know. This is just an interpretation, and your interpretation of what God is saying, what the Bible is saying, is not necessarily accurate. So if God says don't be sexually immoral, why don't you just make that extreme? Why don't you just make that so extreme? If you're one of these people anyway, God says don't be sexually immoral. That means don't have any sexual thoughts. That means never be accidentally turned on. That means don't sit on your dryer. That means don't get a massage chair. That means your back massager better stay above your shoulder blades. That means don't watch anything that's higher than PG rated. That means don't even look at something phallic shaped. The bean in Chicago does not exist. Don't eat hot dogs, including Costco hot dogs. Sorry. You have to be a good Christian woman. But instead, you're going to take it as that means don't send nude photos and don't have sex before marriage. Masturbation? It's okay when I do it. But because I did it, and have now learned that it was wrong, I'm telling you that it's wrong, so you can't do it anymore. It's okay for my generation, we were learning. We've only had the Bible for a couple thousand years, how are we going to know? I hate the way they interpret things to work around their already set ideas. I have this idea, but if I say that it's my idea, it kind of loses purpose, doesn't it? So I'm going to pick out a Bible verse that's in no way specific and molded around my idea.
This is the will of God kind of passage telling us that we are called as Christians to abstain from sexual immorality, any sort of sexual act that's immoral, that goes against God's design for sex within marriage, which is the only biblical and holy place to experience that, the only relationship where that is an honorable, beautiful thing in the sight of God within marriage, but to not pursue the passion of the lust like the Gentiles, right? This is saying there are people who do not know God, and so they act in a way without knowledge of their creator, without a desire to glorify their creator, without understanding their creator's design for them and for their good.
This is completely aside from this video now, but there's that whole argument on Twitter. Someone said something like, how do you know what's right and wrong if you're not religious? And there's an entire section of people who don't understand that morality does not have to be tied to religion. If the only reason you don't murder people is because your religion says not to, and you don't feel like an innate sense of like, this is wrong, that's wild to me.
They have no thought of that. They act in a way without God in mind.
Yeah.
And this verse is saying, don't act like that. As a Christian, this is my will for you, that you do the things mentioned. So I think it's so encouraging and so helpful to get such clear direction from Scripture. And I would say, based on this and many other passages we won't have time to go into, that sexting, taking nude photos of yourself and sending them to someone who is not your husband, that falls in line with sexual immorality. And God is saying, abstain, don't do that. That is not my will for you.
And I think it's important to note that that doesn't mean that like your body is bad, that your body is shameful, that sex is shameful. That's not at all. But it's saying there's a good context for this. There is a good place for this where there has been a commitment, where there has been a covenant, where there is the like sanctity of marriage. There's protection. There is care and love for that. And the way that our culture has just kind of degraded and made sex and nudity like cheap, like dime a dozen, you know? Do people still say that? Like,
I say it's like,
I feel like growing up, that's all our parents said, like dime a dozen. But like times have changed, inflation. Do we still say dime a dozen? Anyway, but it's almost like it's just like been degraded so much. And it's just been kind of like so casual and so cheap. And like, of course, everyone just does this. But I just want you to know there is still like so much beauty.
Every generation, there's been a moment where someone prior to that generation has gone, oh, you people are immoral, you people are sinners, you people are the devil, this generation's the worst. And it happens to the next generation, to the next, to the next, to the next. At some point, a bikini was invented. And at some point, a bunch of Jesus people were going, you're going to hell for showing that much skin. Sex now is not any more immoral than it's ever been. 2 generations ago, your grandfather probably had 2 families, worked one job for $4 an hour that could support both of them somehow, and thrived. Which one was the secret family? I don't know. Were they the weekend one or like only days? Like, oh, dad's never here at night. He works overnight. Nope, he's with his other family. My generation didn't invent strip clubs. My generation didn't invent sex work. My generation didn't invent any of this. My generation didn't invent taking videos for profit, my generation didn't invent sending pictures to people you're married or not to. There's no sex is immoral now. There's no sex is more immoral now. There's no sex is bad now. There's no this generation. It is more accessible now, as is the rest of the world. 30 years ago, if I wanted to play a game of chess with somebody across the country from me, I would have to write down on an envelope E4, mail it, wait 2 weeks, E5, have it mailed back. Knight F3, mail it. Knight C6, have it mailed back 2 weeks later. Bishop B5, mail it. A6, have it mailed back. And then just keep going. Now, if I want to play chess with one of my friends in Pennsylvania, we just start a game on chess.com. There's nothing new to that process rather than it just being more available. The same has happened with every other thing. You don't have to buy VHSs on the things that you want to see alone in your basement anymore. You just get online and you watch it. Now, is there a problem with the volume of consumption? Sure, but that's an entirely different conversation. The availability of everything has made it much more easy to develop an addiction, but that's an entirely different conversation. I'm not telling you to send nudes, and I'm not telling you not to send nudes. I'm saying that it should be done with a lot of trust, whether that's someone you're married to or not. And you should do it because it's something that you want to do, not because you feel pressure to do so. You shouldn't look at yourself and your own body and the things that you want and say, oh, you know, I can send a flirty text, but I don't know if it's worth going to hell.
So much delight and so much just like, I don't know, awe that can be had like for sex, for intimacy, for nudity within the marriage covenant. And
what's so stupid and so funny is that made me imagine her and her husband on their wedding night. They finally kiss and she like takes off her clothes and he goes, bazinga. Because he's just like in awe of seeing a naked woman in person for the first time. He's like, I've seen this online. I've read about these.
Amazing. Like having been married for 6 years, having been married for 14 years.
Almost
like
14.
I don't know about you, but like for me, you're learning, you're changing, you're growing with your spouse. And so it doesn't, for me at least, it doesn't get old. It doesn't get like, seen that before. You know, it's like you grow, you become closer, your love grows. And so the intimacy that you have like with your spouse, it increases and it becomes more amazing as you work on that relationship, as you grow and mature yourself. And so just know like there's so much beauty to be had in marriage and so much delight in that context and so much excitement and fun and meaning that can be had in that context. So I just want you to be excited about that and to just know again that there are godly men who desire a woman who has boundaries, who has convictions. And even if you know, you're like, well, I could settle and get married tomorrow, you know, because there are these guys here that would want to marry me, but you know, they're not godly men. You know, they don't.
I can settle and get married in 4 months. We're watching the Cullen Morgan / Girl Defined collab soon.
Have the convictions and standards that you would hope for. Like, don't settle. It's not worth it. We've shared in different podcast episodes about like the type of man to look for, the type of marriage that can be had. So I really encourage you just to go look back at the last few episodes and maybe to listen those as well. I think it might help you to kind of like round out this conversation.
Well, and I just a side note on that. I think in our book, Love Defined, we talk about, I think, 10 red flags to look for in a romantic relationship. So if you're like, ooh, that's a red flag. If a guy is asking me for nudes and just saying like, look, we're in a committed relationship. We're probably going to get married someday. Or look, we're engaged. We already said that we want to marry each other. It's not that big of a deal. And you start seeing these compromises.
The red flag isn't in asking for something that you want, but the red flag is in then trying to convince them that it's okay. Like if somebody's uncomfortable with something you're asking for, your job is not to be like, no, let me convince you. Your job is to be like, cool, no big deal. And that goes for pretty much anything it is. If it's sex, if it's nudes, if it's trying to force your partner to go onto a roller coaster when it's going to make them cry and they really don't want to. And they're like, hey, listen, I came to hang out with you, but I don't want to be on this roller coaster. It spins. And if I spin, I'm going to puke. And they go, no. You'll be okay. Trust me. I know your body better than you do. And then you puke and they get mad at you. And you're like, I told you it was going to happen. And they're like, I can't believe you did that. Oh.
Those are red flags. And until, you know, having a ring on your finger and being engaged you are not married.
Yeah.
You are saying, I am committed to marrying you, but we are not married yet. So if you start to see some of these compromises, these red flags, I'm not saying just end the relationship right now, right then, like get some counsel, get some godly input and say, this is what's happening. What do you think about this from the outside looking in? What would you advise biblically? how should we handle this? How should I
Yes.
process this request that he just gave me for nude photos? Like, that's a red flag that you need to address and not just brush under the rug and act like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And in Love Defined, we unpack 10 red flags
It's
to
so good.
look for in a romantic relationship. So if you want more on that, I would totally recommend grabbing that. But I just want to talk briefly about what are some of the, like, we've talked a lot about the spiritual side of it and like biblically why this is not a good choice, why it's not okay. But just from a practical standpoint, like, there are other dangers in sending nude photos of yourself and having your image of your body going onto someone else's device and getting uploaded into the cloud for probably forever.
That's a big thing. You should definitely only be sending things to people you trust and people you trust to delete things if any of this ever ends. It's hard because, like, when you like someone so much, you want to be overly trusting of them, and it may be so fast that you don't actually know what they're like. But if you are going to do this, I hope that it is only sent to people that you trust, and that for some reason it's not to someone famous enough for them to get hacked.
In danger of what will that person do? Oh no, I'm not going to show it to anyone. It's just going to be for me. What happens when you break up? What happens when you're no longer together and he's showing his friends for fun or showing his friends for fun? Besides, he's not even your husband. But just the dangers of, like, this is out there forever. Like, you cannot truly scrub the internet of anything. Like, there are ways things can be found even when deleted. So just even thinking from not even spiritually, but just practically, like, do you really want to have nude images of yourself out in the cyber world forever? One day you're getting a job. One day you're married happily to a godly man and you have children and this image resurfaces. Like, just practically, it's not even a wise choice. Like, I don't recommend it even on that level. We just need to sometimes think a little bit ahead of the moment we're in and really ask ourselves, is this a wise choice?
I wonder who they would blame in that situation. Like, if it did happen, like if somebody sent their partner nudes and they broke up and he was showing them to other people, if they would blame her for sending the nudes in the first place. If you're somebody who shows other people's nudes to other people, yeah, go f yourself, dude. That's gross.
For some reason, I thought of this when Dave and I were dating. So Dave, my husband, is like, if he says he's going to do something, like, he will do it. Like, there's like, how you're like, I'm going to read the Bible this year in a year. And like, you get like to the end of, Genesis and you're Deuteronomy and you're like, and you're in Deuteronomy the rest of the year.
Maybe
it's like, my
year.
husband is the type where it's like, if he says he's going to do something, he does it. Like, I remember the first 2 years of our marriage, I think he did like the Bible in a year, like both years, and like anything like that, he just says he's going to do. So anyway, when we were dating, he like decided like very specific like boundaries or things that we were going to have. And even now he might be like, okay, maybe those were a little extreme or whatever, but like, I could not budge him. And I remember thinking like, okay, you're so extreme. Like, so like,
where is this going? We're talking about nude photos.
But I'm saying, like, our physical boundaries were like, he did not, like, he was a man of his word. What he said was going to happen. And
what does that mean? Where you're like, I don't want to kiss until marriage. And he was like, I don't want to hug until marriage. I don't want us making eye contact until marriage. I don't want us high-fiving each other until marriage. I don't even want to be able to smell you until marriage. Actually, don't even look at me until marriage. We're just texting until we get married. Send nudes. like, do you think that's what happened?
sometimes I was like, okay, look, you don't have to be, like, I remember just thinking, like, I'm the extreme one. Like, I'm saving my first kiss for marriage. Like, how like, we're so
could you
strict.
be more extreme?
We're so strict. But the positive of that is that after getting married and being on the other side of it, I realized, like, wow, that's an incredible quality to have a man who respects his word, and what he says he's going to do, he does. And you don't have to wonder, like, behind the scenes what kind of shenanigans and stuff he's doing, because he's a man of his word. And so that's an incredible quality to look for in a guy. If he says he's a Christian, does he live like a Christian?
Yeah.
Does he value God's word? Does he value purity and honor and respecting the marriage covenant? Because it's easy to say things, but what are his actions? What does he actually do? Because if he's saying, like, oh yes, I value sex for marriage, like, no, could you send me that nude on the side? It's like his words mean nothing, and that's not someone you want to end up with. That's not someone you want to marry. You want to marry a man that you can, like, trust, that his word means something to him, that what he says he believes actually outplays, like, in his life.
That's probably like the one piece of advice from this entire video that you should take. And you should take without too much of a question. You should believe who people say they are and then let them be backed up by their actions. Everyone has an idea of who they are. And I am unfortunately set on the idea that everyone thinks they're a better person than they are, including myself. And so you should believe people when they say, this is what I think, this is how I act. But then you should also pay attention to how they act. There are times when you're just going to mess up. That happens, but it shouldn't be very often. Like if you're someone who says, oh, I don't yell, I don't get mad, and then you get mad once or you yell once, cool, happens. But if you're someone who says, I don't fight, dude. Like I don't get in a fight with anyone, but then you argue with everyone in your life all the time. Yeah, massive red flag.
So I just want to encourage you with that to like consider that in this conversation, because a guy asking for new photos, like one, is he even declaring to be a Christian? Because that's important too. But also if he is, like, where are his values? Where are his morals? What is he getting this from the word? Like, yes, ask for nude photo. Like, what kind of guy is he? So look for a man who says, yes, I do declare that Christ is Lord of my life, and I want to actually live this out, and I'm striving for that. So that's just something really important to consider.
Well, you said, what kind of guy is he? He's that kind of guy.
This is the Trump conversation where he's like, yeah, I'm a Christian, and then holds up the Bible upside down. Where you're like, what's your favorite Bible verse? And he's like, they're all good. I would say there's one that's the best, though. It's the best, and it's my favorite, and that's it.
Well, you said, what kind of guy is he? He's that kind of guy. It answers it. Actions speak louder than words. That is actually true. Like, words are easy to say, but the kind of guy he is the kind of actions that he shows.
Exactly.
So that is good. We're going to end on that note, guys. I hope this was encouraging to you, more encouraging than discouraging. And then come back next week and join us for another fiery topic here on the Girl Defined Show.
Like they say fiery topic, like they have any real conversation to have instead of just God said no, God said no, go, get out of here. Sex before marriage, no. Sending nudes, no. Masturbation before marriage, for me, sure. For you, no, go. I'm married now. What I did before I got married doesn't count, okay? Seeing yourself naked before marriage, nope. Go. What else? Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what I expected out of Girl Defined at this point. Like, they have a very set idea on a conversation they want to have, and then they wrap it around this, like, fake Bible lesson. Like, well, God said don't send nudes, actually. And it's a Bible verse about just being sexually immoral, which we can interpret to mean anything. They interpret it to mean anything they want to criticize. And that's great. That's what I expect out of people who are so outwardly Christian that they hate the people who are not like them. I'll summarize a little bit of my own thoughts that I've had throughout the video. If you're a teenager, you shouldn't be sending nudes at all. It's entirely different to be in that situation, right? Like I remember being 16 and whatever you told me at that point, I would not have listened to, but might as well say it anyway. If you're an adult and you're sending these to somebody you trust because you want to, that's great. If you're an adult and you're sending these to somebody because they're begging you for it, consider that you probably don't want to be with the person that's begging you for it. If somebody says, oh, I would never force you to do that, but then immediately into your relationship, they start begging, or even later on, they start begging, that's probably not someone who is the person they say they are. You should do what you're comfortable with, especially with your own body. If that's posting it online, if that's sending it to other people, that's dope. That's fantastic. The only person who should be judging you is yourself. There's unfortunately no right way to do anything anymore. The internet is too open. Somehow, some way, someone is going to find a way to criticize you for whatever thoughts you have, for however you look, whatever you say. Even if you think you're right, even if the majority of people think you're right, someone on the internet is going to tell you that you're wrong. I have a friend named Madison, who's a software engineer. She posts on Twitter all the time about being a software engineer. She's very conventionally attractive, and so a lot of her replies are men asking her to start an OF. She'll quote tweet them with something like, my bio literally says I don't have one, I'm not going to have one. Or she'll get replies saying, you don't know anything about software engineering, also I saw you on OF. Or, oh, you have a link tree in your bio, that means you have an OF. And her bio says she doesn't have an OF, and she doesn't have one, and you'll never find one anywhere. But it's just a bunch of weird men making assumptions of who this person is when all she's doing is talking about software engineering because that's her job. So it's a bunch of weird men making assumptions about who she is, about who she should be, and who they want her to be. So no matter who it is that you are, what it is that you have to say, someone is going to criticize you. And so it's really hard for me to sit here and convince myself that me or anyone else in any way is going to convince them that they're wrong, but they are. If you're the person like they are that goes, either you follow my interpretation of the Bible or you're going to hell, then you're wrong. You're just wrong. Like there's no way that you believe in a Jesus who would so adamantly back that up. There's no way you believe in a Jesus who's up there in heaven right now, still on the cross going, you tell him. You tell him. Does that mean? But I'm going to give up on yapping now. Thank you all for spending time with me. Thank you all for sitting through Girl Defined with me. I do want to go through the Girl Defined Paul Morgan collab. Well, I guess there's two. There's Paul and Morgan's video, 24 Hours with Bethany Beal. And then there's Struggles of Being a Christian YouTube Couple with Paul and Morgan, from Girl Defined from a year ago. Oh, and one from 5 years ago. But I'm going to call it there, and that'll probably be later this week. So thank you all for spending time with me. This is my favorite thing to do. You're my favorite people to do it with. Toast is unfortunately in the other room. She just gets a lot of sun in there and she likes it. Here, since Toast is gone, y'all can say goodbye to Giratina instead.